And we're back. It is another episode, another week. Football's past. This is the Fantasy Football Forum, and we are back with our weekly show for you today. Again, we've changed up our format, so if you are new to the show, we thank you for watching today. Go find us on YouTube. Look for us on Spotify, where you find your podcast, and you'll get our weekly content that uploaded. We are going to be reviewing one game this week. We're going to be previewing one game for the upcoming Week 5 schedule. Remember, there are buys this week, so go out, prepare well. We'll also have a set of start-sit questions to help you with your potential week, and then waiver wire additions that we're going to go through. Maybe there are still some players out there that you may want to have rostered but maybe missed on, or maybe need replacements for bye weeks. So it will be a solo episode this week. Grant has family stuff going on, so we wish him all the best this week, but we will nonetheless persevere with this week's show. For the game review, actually, Grant sent me his notes on game review. He was live at the Kansas City New York Jets game on Sunday in New York. So, for the game review, Kansas City New York Jets. Live from that game for the Jets, Zach Wilson. He looks up into the stands from the field. The vision of his inspiration for the game on Sunday. No, he didn't see Taylor Swift and thought he was going to have the game of his life. Nope. But next to Taylor Swift was none other than Mama Kelsey in the stands. And he knew he would have the game of his career for the NFL. All joking aside, and that's a low fruit there for Zach Wilson jokes, but all joking aside, the Jets did play a great game after a slow start in the first quarter. This may be a time to try and buy low on some of the Jets players, specifically Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. They have a very favorable schedule going forward. Next 4 of the 5 games, they have Denver, the New York Giants, LA, and Las Vegas for 4 of the next 5 games. News did come out on Wednesday that Hall should no longer be on a snap count. And for those of us that drafted Hall, this should be the no surprise that we saw him slowly ramp up in September. But now, fully after a year of an ACL repair, should be good to go. So this is the time, if you have a manager that is soured a bit on Hall, this is the time to buy low on him. But Hall is ready to be unleashed. So the path to trading is pointing out. Path to trading for Hall is now. I will point out that while there's a bigger workload coming for Hall against Kansas City, who we would all say is a very good defense, 43 of Hall's 56 yards did come on one play. So that is what you can say to a manager if you're trying to buy low on Hall, is while his usage may come up, he still may not look like the same player yet. So we are hoping he is that outlier, that he will be that league winner down the stretch. But there is still some concern. So while trade for Hall, don't overpay for him. Garrett Wilson saw a massive target share switching over to the other position. Massive target share that you would want for, and let's face it, he is a wide receiver 2 at this point. He is not in that wide receiver 1 without Josh Allen. So the Jets do have a concentrated concentrated effort who's getting the ball. While Alan Lazard did score the touchdown, and there are others that are involved, it's mainly Hall and Garrett Wilson. The Jets as a team, they are built to try and get a lead, run the ball efficiently, and hold teams on defense. That was what they wanted to be when Rodgers was signed. They wanted to be an efficient offense that wasn't very flashy, that could score points, and the defense could take the lead that the offense gave them and hold opposing teams to that low score. This was the team they wanted to be in 2023, and we may see a stretch here where that is how they play. If Wilson's able to play efficiently like he did against Kansas City, we may see an uptick in Jets players. We may see more news coming out for them. So before this stretch, this is where you want to buy low on your Jets players. On to the Kansas City side, this is probably the worst game that we will see from Mahomes. He looked very mortal in this game. Mahomes is QB8 on the air. Now is the time that if you really buy into Mahomes, which everybody should play in fantasy football, you need to trade for him. If you have a league mate who's panicked about the game, about the offense and how stagnant the offense has looked, this is the time to go get Mahomes. Kelsey is still cemented as the lead pass catcher. It's difficult to see who's going to come out from this young wide receiver room. We heard on the broadcast Sunday night about how the young, talented group is the most talented wide receivers that they have had in Mahomes' playing career. And we still have yet for that to be shown. So I did think early on it was going to be Sky Moore this season that would emerge, but it seems that there's a concentration between Sky Moore and Rashee Rice leading the team after Kelsey, of course. Now, there's one of two paths you can take with this. There's not going to be an emerging wide receiver for Kansas City this season, similar to last year, although Juju was that solid wide receiver 2 flex option weekly, and we haven't seen that yet. That is, of course, one of the paths, and yeah, that's what we've seen over the last 4 weeks. We can't argue that. Or, and this is the option I'm going to take, actually, and this is my opinion. Now is the time, if you really have a thought, which most of us did, as a Kansas City wide receiver that's going to be emerging, it's these next few weeks. There are far more favorable matchups in the next few weeks. We have Vikings, Broncos, Chargers, Broncos, and Dolphins before the Kansas City's bye. While right now there's no wide receiver that's leading the room, if it's going to happen, it's going to be during this stretch. It's a very favorable matchup. It's going to happen during this stretch. My call is going to be Rashee Rice. It's going to be the rookie, not Sky Moore. So I'm going to take the information that I previously thought beforehand, and I have new information. We have 4 weeks of data. Rashee Rice is the one that's leading the team in targets as a wide receiver behind Travis Kelce, and he is quietly being held as the wide receiver that you would want to own. He just hasn't had that boom game. But if it's going to happen, it's going to be during this stretch. So if Rashee Rice, maybe it's Sky Moore if you want to believe that. I won't fault you because we don't know. I'm now hedging my bet on Rashee Rice, not Sky Moore. That will be the wide receiver that you want to roster for Kansas City. So quickly on the run game, Pacheco had a great homecoming game. This game against the Jets, however, it's an offense that does pass a lot more with Kansas City. There's a clear 3-headed monster in Kansas City's running back room: Pacheco, CEH, and Jerick McKinnon. Pacheco should be considered a flex, potential wide running back 2. This was his best game this year. So there's an opportunity to potentially sell high, but understand his ceiling is going to be capped from a week by week situation. So just understand that. Enjoy the boom game, but there still could be some competition in games, especially if the next few weeks they get off to a big lead and want to conserve some playing, and Pacheco gets fewer reps because others are rotating in more. On to this next week 5 game preview. There's one game I'm particularly excited to talk about, and that's San Francisco 49ers facing Dallas. After last week's games for both the 49ers beating the Cardinals or the Cowboys handling the Patriots, Bill Belichick's his worst loss as a coach for the Patriots, questions were already coming to both teams about this coming week's opponent, each other. The revenge game for the Cowboys, it's a prove-it game for the 49ers. Last time these teams played, Dallas was able to give Purdy his worst game without any injury of his short career starting last year. Purdy looked mortal. He was rushed. He got flustered by the Dallas defense. He looked average. When Purdy faces good defenses, he has looked average. Dallas continues to build their defense. They did over the offseason, and it's shown in this early start to this season. For fantasy purposes, on the 49ers, while I just talked about how Purdy looks mortal, if you don't have a better option, I'm still starting him, but expect QB2 numbers this week. He's still starting him in 2 quarterback leagues, but you may be able to find a better option, potentially how your roster is built in single quarterback leagues. I don't expect QB1 numbers. He's a very middle of the road quarterback. He has great weapons around him, but Dallas may have a way to fluster him again this season. For McCaffrey, Dallas has given up on average 4.61 yards per carry to opponents. At least last week, they gave up over 222 yards to Arizona, James Conner, and the like. The leading rusher should be without question in your lineup. McCaffrey should be starting. You shouldn't question it. Check the health status of Deebo Samuel. I understand if you may have better options, you don't start him this week. He may be a flex option at best, but if he's healthy, he would be the wide receiver I would want to start. Deebo is more the zone beater, not the man beater. Ayuk is the man beater, not the zone beater for defenses. Especially if Deebo is limited. I'm starting Kittle. He could be that zone beater, play that Deebo role for Purdy this week. Brandon Ayuk, he is the lead receiver for San Francisco. He could have a very nice game, but he does struggle against more zone. He does not find those pockets well. He is the main target for man defenses. So I would potentially temper expectations. On the Cowboys side, it's kind of concentrated here. I'm going to start Dak, but I don't maybe feel good about it. So if I am starting Dak this week against a very good defense, I may have my Pepto-Bismol or some sort of aid, as I might be very nauseous if I have to watch that game. Tony Pollard, he's the 5th leading rusher this year for fantasy. He's going to have his biggest test this week, but I'm still going to start him. CeeDee Lamb's the only wide receiver I'm looking at starting on the Cowboys. And if I have tight end, and it's not one of the big ones, not Kelsey, Andrews, one of the big ones, I'm actually okay streaming Jake Ferguson. If you found Ferguson on waiver wires, I'll stream him in hopes for production in the tight end wasteland that we have. On to our waiver wire additions for the week. And yes, this is after waivers had run for Tuesday waivers. Maybe you have Wednesday waivers that came, as this will probably be out late Wednesday or early Thursday. Top ads, it would have been CJ Stroud for me if you're needing a quarterback. On Sleeper, he's 77% rostered as of Wednesday morning. I would keep him. Maybe you drafted a Deshaun Watson. Maybe you have struggling late round quarterback that hasn't hit. CJ Stroud is a streamer that is now should be considered a weekly starter. The Texans are throwing at a high pace, and they don't appear to be slowing down. Jaleel McLaughlin, he is 48% rostered as of the time of recording this on Sleeper. The matchup looks good on paper because the Jets just gave up 150 yards to Isaiah Pacheco, but Denver is not Kansas City. I'm going to say temper your expectations for him. Denver has a very bad week-by-week matchup for the next few weeks. So if you rostered him, it's fine, but I think there are better options out there. Wide receiver Michael Wilson. He is 45% rostered as of after Tuesday waivers. Josh Dobbs is giving us a Kyler Murray stat line now. He is playing almost as well as what Kyler Murray was doing last year. Wilson is emerging. Yes, the rookie. I understand Hollywood Brown's still there, but Wilson is slowly emerging. He's already surpassed Rondale Moore, which should not be surprising. He has the body type, the athleticism for the wide receiver one position there. Hollywood Brown should play his role as a Z receiver, where Wilson should be that X receiver, and it's starting to show. Michael Wilson is coming. He will be a back half of the season wide receiver you want to roster. If you want production now and you didn't like Jaleel McLaughlin, Chuba Hubbard, 34% rostered on Sleeper after Tuesday waivers, so plenty of leagues out there that you can go get him. Sanders is dealing with a groin injury. He's dealing with other injuries too. Hubbard played that lead role last week, and he saw production. This is a far better ad than McLaughlin, especially if you need production now. Chuba Hubbard should be rostered in more leagues. I already spoke about Rashee Rice for Kansas City. He is 48% rostered on Sleeper. He has not had his boot game yet. But now is the time to add him before this stretch of fantastic games, fantastic matchups. If it's going to happen, it's going to be during the stretch. Feel free to drop him if it does not happen during this stretch. But for now, I'm going to wait and hold. I'm going to wait and see if I can. If you play in deeper leagues, you're looking for a deeper stash. Keaton Mitchell, 13% rostered on Sleeper. Gus Edwards, Justice Hill have been dealing with injuries and have continued to deal with injuries. Keaton Mitchell had 1,700 yards as a college prospect in his last year. He's a very speedy running back. He could become that lead back for Baltimore. He's the same process that led you to drafting J.K. Dobbins, going and picking up Justice Hill. This is why we get Keaton Mitchell now. Tajay Spears, he's only 35% rostered. I understand Henry had a very good game last week, but snap share wise, Spears is still playing plenty of snaps. That if something were to happen to Henry, and again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's year 7 for Derrick Henry. We have seen the slow production up until last week. That's potentially going to continue to happen. Tajay Spears should be a handcuff that is rostered. And lastly, wide receiver Trey Palmer. He is only 2% rostered. Now, I understand the Bucs are on bye this week, but this is the week to go get him, stash him if you have a roster spot that is open, and you can wait and see. Especially if Mike Evans, his hamstring injury is lingering and keeps him out more. Trey Palmer played 100% of the snaps last week for the Bucs. He is a speedy wide receiver. Yes, he's a rookie. But Palmer is that Mike Evans backup that if Mike Evans is going to miss time, it is Trey Palmer that you want on your team. So, new segment here. A very quick new segment, but this will be the not in my league because it won't happen. The situations I'm going to talk about will never happen in your league. So it's the not in my league. Start sit, and potential trades, whether it's trade away or trade for players. This week we have 2 trade away players, but on start sits, Sam Howell against Chicago, you should start. I shouldn't have to mention what Chicago looks like on defense. It's a very Swiss cheese defense. If you've had Sam Howell and streamed him, yes, there have been frustrating games, but this should be a good matchup for him. If you have Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm sitting. Not while Montgomery's getting that workload. Montgomery seems back. I'm sitting Jahmyr Gibbs. This is the production we should have anticipated for him. Not the hopeful, hey, he's going to get the plus DeAndre Swift role. Follow the money. Montgomery is a better back than Jamal Williams was last year. And Gibbs, while he may have a fantastic career, it's just going to be a slow start this year. And we should have anticipated that. If this player is playing, he practiced this week, he came back, I'm going to start, if I have him, Jonathan Taylor. And that's if he suits up. But if he suits up, I'm sliding him right into that starting role on my fantasy team. I'm going to sit, if I can, and you may not have a better option, though, so you may have to start him. But if I can, I'm sitting Ramondre Stevenson. I understand if you have to start him, but definitely lower expectations, but I would sit him this week. He was not going to get you the production you want, and if I can, I would like to trade him away, try and trade on name value, and look at the upcoming schedule for the Patriots, see if you can find the holes that are there. There is a sleeper I have this week. I think the Philadelphia Eagles should be on watch. I understand the expectations for them this year are very high because they made the Super Bowl, and they are 4-0. They just haven't had the games that we liked last year, but it is a different schedule this year. Far more difficult opponents for them this year. So it should not be a surprise that this team looks a little different, but they are still 4-0. So they should be, in our minds, meeting expectations, even though in a lot of our minds, they're not. But the sleeper this week is Tutu Atwell for the LA Rams. Same reason that Jahan Dotson had a really good game against them last week. The route tree that Atwell runs is the same as what Dotson does. It's a very speedy wide receiver. I think he is a sleeper this week. So, and again, the not in my league trade aways. I'm going to say this one is going to be kind of controversial because he's a top 5 in his position, but you got him off the waiver wire. So it could be a very risky pick to trade away. You may think, well, I didn't get enough for him because look what he's going to go. Look at what he's going to do, or because of timing, you may not be able to get what you think you can because your managers know the risk. That's Puka Nacua. Again, it's a very risky trade away because he still could have a massive value. But the return of Cooper Kupp is imminent, and I think that does limit the ceiling for Nacua. Best case for him, he is still that zone wide receiver. Again, I talked about it earlier with zone versus man as far as who does well with the 49ers, and Debo's a zone wide receiver and Ayuk's a man wide receiver, the ones that break out during those games, would depending on what the defenses give them. Kupp has more of the speed, potentially, if his hamstring's fully back to healthy. So he's going to be probably that man wide receiver playing against man that you want to have. Nacua still could have value as a zone wide receiver, but that doesn't exclude what Kupp can do in his zone as well. So best case wide receiver, best case scenario for that one for Puka Nacua is he is more used in a zone game than a man one. But I would say I'm going to try to trade him away, use this past production to say, look, it's still what we wanted. This is why we were drafting Cooper Kupp. He's filling that role, and it won't be ignored after Kupp comes back. Second person I'm going to trade in my league, if I have him, is Kyren Williams. This should be an obvious trade away if you roster him. He does not look like a high performer, although he has given you weeks that have produced, and I understand the volume is driving this. This is what should be your main reason to try and sell him away is the volume. But his metrics, he looks very poor on the metrics side. He also doesn't look good on the eye test on film. Now, you might be able to still sell the volume to somebody who's running back needy and sell him as an RB2. You could trade for an underperforming running back or maybe underperforming wide receiver, selling the pass production for Williams, and hopefully gets better down the road for that underperforming running back or wide receiver. Maybe this is time to use Kyren Williams to get Breece Hall. You may have to put Kyren Williams plus a little something else to get Breece Hall, but that's what I would do. That's what I would try if I could. Maybe somebody's not really buying Devon Achane yet. I would go get them. Go see if you can put an offer in for him. Sell Kyren Williams. Or trade away, I should say. Trade away Kyren Williams. But again, that's not going to happen in my league. So I don't know why you would want to do it. But anyway, that's going to do it for this week, folks. Short episode. But again, like and subscribe to our page on YouTube. Find us on Spotify. Get our weekly content that we produce every week. And we will see you next week. And may your fantasy rosters have success and fortune this week. We'll see you next time.